Welcome to Speak Peak English. Today, we are going to practice listening and speaking skills with the heartfelt story, A Twist of Fate. Get ready for a journey filled with emotions, unexpected turns, and a little romance. Listen carefully. A Twist of Fate. In a small coastal town, Elena owned a quaint little bookstore that had been in her family for generations. The shop, turning pages, was her sanctuary, filled with the scent of old paper, wooden shelves, and cozy reading corners. Despite her love for it, Elena's life felt like it was on repeat. She was waiting for something, though she didn't know what, to shake things up. Then one summer morning, a stranger walked into Turning Pages. He was tall with tousled dark hair, and he wore a slightly wrinkled suit that looked out of place in the laid-back town. He was looking at his phone, frowning, and didn't even notice the shelf in front of him. With a loud thud, he walked straight into it, knocking a stack of books onto the floor. Embarrassed, he started picking them up, muttering apologies. Elena, both amused and annoyed, walked over. "Need some help?" she asked, her tone light but curious. "Actually, yes," he said, looking up with a sheepish grin. "I'm Cole. I just moved here, sort of unexpectedly. Guess I'm still finding my way around." Elena chuckled, helping him with the books. "Well, welcome to Redwood Cove, Cole. We're a small town, but not that hard to navigate." She pointed to a guidebook on the counter. "That might help you avoid running into things." They both laughed, and Cole ended up buying the guidebook, along with a mystery novel he picked up on a whim. As he was leaving, he turned and said, "I might be back for more navigation help." There was a spark in his eyes that lingered with Elena long after he left. Cole returned the next day, and the day after that. Soon, visiting Turning Pages became part of his daily routine, and he always left with a book and a bit of conversation with Elena. Over time, they grew closer, and their exchanges turned from small talk to deeper conversations about life, dreams, and regrets. One evening, after a long day, Cole found himself lingering in the shop long after closing time. "There's something about this place," he said, looking around. "It feels like home." Elena smiled softly. "It's felt like home to me, too, for as long as I can remember. But sometimes I wonder if it's holding me back." Cole looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I've always wanted to travel, to see the world, but I feel tied down here. The shop is my family's legacy." She hesitated. "But I also wonder what's out there for me." Their connection grew stronger, but there was always a distance between them, a secret Cole was keeping. As much as he wanted to stay close to Elena, he knew his time in Redwood Cove had an expiration date. One evening, just before closing, Cole finally confessed. "Elena, there's something I need to tell you. I came here because I was running away. I was engaged to someone back home, but it wasn't working. We were going through the motions, trying to hold on to something that had faded. So, I left everything behind, hoping to find clarity." Elena felt a pang in her chest, but she nodded, understanding. "You needed space. I get it. But what are you going to do now?" Cole took a deep breath. "I don't know. Meeting you has made everything even more complicated." His eyes met hers, full of mixed emotions. In the weeks that followed, they spent as much time together as possible, knowing Cole's decision was imminent. They explored Redwood Cove, went on picnics by the cliffs, watched sunsets over the ocean, and shared quiet moments in the bookstore. Every second felt precious, yet tinged with the sadness of their uncertain future. One rainy evening, as they stood by the lighthouse, Elena finally asked, "Will you stay?" Cole looked out over the ocean, torn. "I want to, but I can't make that promise. There are things I have to face back home, and as much as I want this..." He gestured between them, his voice filled with regret. "I don't want to hold you back, Elena. You deserve someone who's certain." Days passed in silence. The bookstore felt emptier without Cole, and Elena realized just how much he had come to mean to her. She thought about his words, about her dreams of leaving the town one day, and suddenly everything became clear. Determined, Elena locked up the shop one last time. She left a note for her parents, explaining that she needed to chase her dreams, that the bookstore would always be there, but that she wouldn't let it be her entire world. She caught the last bus out of town, her heart pounding with both excitement and sadness. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant leaving behind the comfort of Redwood Cove. A year passed, and Elena traveled across cities and countries, taking in all the sights she had dreamed of. But there was one place, one face she couldn't forget. It was a chilly spring morning when she found herself back in Redwood Cove, her heart racing as she walked toward Turning Pages. To her surprise, there was Cole, standing by the door, holding a familiar mystery novel. He looked up, his eyes widening in shock, and then softening in recognition. "I thought you'd never come back," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had to see what was out there. But I realized," Elena said, smiling through her tears, "home isn't a place. It's a person." Cole took her hand, his eyes filled with the same spark from that first day. And there, in front of the little bookstore where it had all begun, they shared their first kiss, finally home in each other's arms. Now, let's practice English listening and speaking skills with a repeat after me session from the story, A Twist of Fate. Are you ready? Let's begin. A Twist of Fate. In a small coastal town, Elena owned a quaint little bookstore that had been in her family for generations. The shop, Turning Pages, was her sanctuary, filled with the scent of old paper, wooden shelves, and cozy reading corners. Despite her love for it, Elena's life felt like it was on repeat. She was waiting for something, though she didn't know what, to shake things up. Then one summer morning, a stranger walked into Turning Pages. He was tall with tousled dark hair, and he wore a slightly wrinkled suit that looked out of place in the laid-back town. He was looking at his phone, frowning, and didn't even notice the shelf in front of him. With a loud thud, he walked straight into it, knocking a stack of books onto the floor. Embarrassed, he started picking them up, muttering apologies. Elena, both amused and annoyed, walked over. "Need some help?" she asked, her tone light but curious. "Actually, yes," he said, looking up with a sheepish grin. "I'm Cole. I just moved here, sort of unexpectedly. Guess I'm still finding my way around." Elena chuckled, helping him with the books. "Well, welcome to Redwood Cove, Cole. We're a small town, but not that hard to navigate." She pointed to a guidebook on the counter. "That might help you avoid running into things." They both laughed, and Cole ended up buying the guidebook, along with a mystery novel he picked up on a whim. As he was leaving, he turned and said, "I might be back for more navigation help." There was a spark in his eyes that lingered with Elena long after he left. Cole returned the next day, and the day after that. Soon, visiting Turning Pages became part of his daily routine, and he always left with a book and a bit of conversation with Elena. Over time, they grew closer, and their exchanges turned from small talk to deeper conversations about life, dreams, and regrets. One evening, after a long day, Cole found himself lingering in the shop long after closing time. "There's something about this place," he said, looking around. "It feels like home." Elena smiled softly. "It's felt like home to me, too, for as long as I can remember. But sometimes I wonder if it's holding me back." Cole looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I've always wanted to travel, to see the world, but I feel tied down here." "The shop is my family's legacy." She hesitated. "But I also wonder what's out there for me." Their connection grew stronger, but there was always a distance between them, a secret Cole was keeping. As much as he wanted to stay close to Elena, he knew his time in Redwood Cove had an expiration date. One evening just before closing, Cole finally confessed. "Elena, there's something I need to tell you. I came here because I was running away." "I was engaged to someone back home, but it wasn't working. We were going through the motions, trying to hold on to something that had faded. So, I left everything behind, hoping to find clarity." Elena felt a pang in her chest, but she nodded, understanding. "You needed space. I get it. But what are you going to do now?" Cole took a deep breath. "I don't know. Meeting you has made everything even more complicated." His eyes met hers, full of mixed emotions. In the weeks that followed, they spent as much time together as possible, knowing Cole's decision was imminent. They explored Redwood Cove, went on picnics by the cliffs, watched sunsets over the ocean, and shared quiet moments in the bookstore. Every second felt precious, yet tinged with the sadness of their uncertain future. One rainy evening, as they stood by the lighthouse, Elena finally asked, "Will you stay?" Cole looked out over the ocean, torn. "I want to, but I can't make that promise. There are things I have to face back home, and as much as I want this." He gestured between them, his voice filled with regret. "I don't want to hold you back, Elena. You deserve someone who's certain." Days passed in silence. The bookstore felt emptier without Cole, and Elena realized just how much he had come to mean to her. She thought about his words, about her dreams of leaving the town one day, and suddenly everything became clear. Determined, Elena locked up the shop one last time. She left a note for her parents, explaining that she needed to chase her dreams, that the bookstore would always be there, but that she wouldn't let it be her entire world. She caught the last bus out of town, her heart pounding with both excitement and sadness. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant leaving behind the comfort of Redwood Cove. A year passed, and Elena traveled across cities and countries, taking in all the sights she had dreamed of. But there was one place, one face she couldn't forget. It was a chilly spring morning when she found herself back in Redwood Cove, her heart racing as she walked toward turning pages. To her surprise, there was Cole, standing by the door, holding a familiar mystery novel. He looked up, his eyes widening in shock, and then softening in recognition. "I thought you'd never come back," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had to see what was out there. But I realized," Elena said, smiling through her tears, "home isn't a place. It's a person." Cole took her hand, his eyes filled with the same spark from that first day. And there, in front of the little bookstore where it had all begun, they shared their first kiss, finally home in each other's arms. Great job today. You've done wonderfully practicing your English listening and speaking skills with the story. A twist of fate. Keep practicing each day, and you'll continue to improve. Don't forget to come back to Speak Peak English for more engaging lessons. See you next time. Take care.